So here we are, it is the last day of July of 2023 as we roll into August, which marks 23 more days until the release of the Ahsoka Tano series by Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni, something that Disney executives, by the way, are really banking on and crossing their fingers that this is going to really kind of boost that momentum again for the Star Wars franchise and the fans simultaneously. This is Mike Zero. Subscribe if you're new and like this video to see future updates. I'm also on Twitter at Mike01. I thank you also very much for the great and kind support. And let's get right into exactly what's going on with Jon Favreau here, because we know that given that Jon Favreau was not like a main writer on this series, nor was he a major co-writer or anything like that, this was all really, for the most part, 100% written by Dave Filoni, and how really, he is trying to focus on elements of Heir to the Empire getting thrown into the mix of the new. Now, we know that there's been a lot of criticism about this show, and, people have their valid reasons of skepticism based on the latest final trailer that debuted just some weeks ago. And there's a lot of people that are very standoffish about this show, and others that are very hopeful about it, because, this is, after all, a series that revolves around the Jedi, the Sith, technically, as well as Thrawn, and all these characters that are getting adapted. But let's dive into something that Jon Favreau unveiled that is actually quite concerning, because it has a lot to do with sequel trilogy elements and Kathleen Kennedy herself. Let's get into it. Now, we know that Jon Favreau may not agree with everything what Dave Filoni does with the Star Wars franchise. They kind of always develop their own ideas and try to really create a balance. But with both Favreau and Filoni dedicated to Ahsoka and Mando Season 4 right now, however, recently Favreau gave and delivered something substantial to Star Wars fans that is quite upsetting to a degree. He went on to deliver the following to everyone. So, we have Ahsoka coming up, and I know John Watts is handling Skeleton Crew, but the one thing that we allowed Kathleen Kennedy to throw into this show earlier on, some months ago, was something that she did with the sequel movies, and though myself and Dave have been on our own for the most part with this story, Kathy insisted that Sabine Wren, one of the characters that we adapted from Rebels into live action, would be the one to take hold of Ezra Bridger's lightsaber for the most part of the show, much like how Kathy handled this between Luke and Rey, with Rey handling Luke's saber. She figured it would be a very good parallel to use since Ezra is not going to be fully present in the show, just to be clear with everyone. We sort of course, are following that Luke Skywalker treatment, where it's all about finding Ezra, and Sabine gets to wield the legacy of Ezra using his saber against the all-powerful and evil Shin Hati, Balin's apprentice. I mean, I can't say much past this, but Kathy and many of the directors really wanted to incorporate parallels that would borrow elements from all trilogy movies, including the sequels, since they and Kathy wanted the series to honor all the Skywalker saga films in a symbolic way. Now guys, before I move on to the next thing that Favreau elaborates on, let me just say one thing about this. This is the one wild piece of criticism that I have for the Ahsoka show, is that they are literally copy and pasting what was done in The Force Awakens, essentially. The Force Awakens, it was all about finding Luke. Ahsoka, it's all about finding Ezra. In The Force Awakens, it's all about grabbing hold of the Skywalker saber that once belonged to Luke and his father before him. Here, same exact thing applies. Sabine Wren picks up Ezra's lightsaber. Ezra is barely in the show. Do you guys see the pattern here about what Kathleen Kennedy was able to incorporate into the show? And though, must I add, Kathleen Kennedy really had no creative power, and I say power over this series, Dave Filoni seemingly allowed some of Kathleen Kennedy's ideas and concepts that she insisted upon to be inserted into the show. Does this signal and connect to the past rumors from months ago that John and Dave had a little bit of a rift where Filoni kind of betrayed Favreau? Who knows? Maybe there's a connection there. But this specifically is the only thing that really bothers me so far about the Ahsoka series. And yeah, sure, we can look at it at, in front of all of us here. If you look at the trailer, one wild piece of criticism is that, yeah, Sabine Wren is basically kind of getting the Rey treatment, Ezra is getting the Luke treatment in this film. And though Jon is making it clear that this show really kind of takes parallels from all the sequel trilogy movies and all the original and prequel trilogy films, and this is one of the big elements that are passed down to the Ahsoka series. And again, it's a Kathleen Kennedy-driven idea, and it's not all that surprising, because at the end of the day, Bob Iger did say that this show was being all done by Jon and Dave. Did Bob Iger literally lie to everybody that Kathleen Kennedy had no hand in this project? It seems so to an extent. Now, on top of this, he goes on to say further, so this is why you are going to witness Sabine carrying and fighting with Ezra's saber. She holds a great connection to the Force in the show, and we have some interesting twists and turns that are centered on her as a character. I would say this was the only major sequel trilogy parallel that we threw into the show, but it was Kathy's idea, and Dave really wanted to honor that. I may have disagreed with this approach from the beginning at first, to be honest, but I accepted it for what it was, since it's Filoni's creation. He is the writer, he did everything here, and really handled the story all by himself. I only contributed in segments, but it was fun assisting him in the story with the script. I don't know about you guys, but we have discussed this months ago, more like 5 months ago. There were rumors rumbling around out there that Dave Filoni, somewhat to an extent, sided with Kathleen Kennedy and took some of her insistent ideas and threw them into Ahsoka. Not meaning that Kathy had control over Ahsoka, but that Dave respected some of Kathy's ideas that Jon Favreau disagreed with. It's seemingly connecting with that, as Jon says here, of course, that he did not agree with Dave's treatment of kind of copying and pasting elements of the whole Luke and Rey treatment in The Force Awakens into Ahsoka. This is my criticism, and this is the one thing that everybody else, I believe, will agree with me on, is that, first off, Kathleen Kennedy destroyed the Darksaber in Mando Season 3. It's pretty much parallel with the destruction of the Skywalker Saber in The Last Jedi. In Mando Season 3, you have Praetorian Guards. In The Last Jedi, you got Praetorian Guards. The list goes on and on about the parallels of the sequel trilogy that Kathleen Kennedy threw in there. So, we know that Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni, if you look at the two of them between each other, Jon is the very big guy that tends to really call out Kathleen Kennedy more so. Dave Filoni is usually the guy that does that in a more subtle way and kind of does things in a nicer approach. He doesn't really seem to steer too far away from Kathleen Kennedy, let's just say that, and Jon tends to show his criticism. So there were a couple of interviews actually where Jon and Dave were actually on camera kind of arguing, not arguing, but kind of going back and forth whether or not Luke was a Jedi in Return of the Jedi. It was a kind of weird thing to watch, to be honest, when they were promoting Mando Season 3, but anyways, guys, drop a comment below, fill me in below in the comments what you all have to say about this, and if you guys did enjoy the content for today, make sure to drop a thumbs up on this video to support the channel, and I will catch you guys next time.
From night to moon, we hear them moans again.